In the year 55, a man had his leg deliberately broken by his own master. He didn't scream. He didn't beg. He simply said calmly, "You will break my leg," and when it broke, he added, "There, I told you so." That man was enslaved. He owned nothing, not even his own body. And yet centuries later, emperors, soldiers, and struggling people all over the world would turn to his teachings to survive the worst moments of their lives. His name was Epictetus, and what he discovered in chains is still one of the most powerful ideas a human being can carry. Today we're unlocking that idea and the philosophy built around it called Stoicism. The story doesn't start with him, though. It starts with a shipwreck. Around 300 BC, a merchant named Zeno was sailing across the Mediterranean with a cargo of expensive dye, when his ship sank and took his entire fortune down with it. He washed up in Athens with nothing left. Instead of falling apart, he wandered into a bookshop, picked up a text on Socrates, and felt something click into place inside him. He began studying under a local philosopher, and eventually started teaching his own ideas from a painted porch in the Athens marketplace, a porch called the Stoa. That's where the word Stoic comes from, not comfort, not privilege, a ruined man building wisdom out of wreckage. That pattern repeats throughout this philosophy's history, and it matters because it tells you where real resilience actually comes from. It rarely comes from people who had it easy. Epictetus, the enslaved teacher who calmly accepted his own broken leg, eventually earned his freedom and built his entire teaching around one life-changing distinction. Some things are within our control, some things are not, and peace only comes from clearly knowing the difference. Sit with that, because it's the engine underneath everything Stoicism teaches. Your opinions, your choices, your effort, your reactions, those belong entirely to you. But other people's opinions of you, whether your flight gets delayed, whether someone you love makes a certain choice, none of that is fully yours to command. Most human suffering, Epictetus argued, comes from mixing those two categories up, gripping tightly onto things that were never ours to hold. Think about how much of your own stress fits that pattern. Obsessing over a stranger's opinion, replaying an argument, trying to mentally rewrite something that already happened. Every time you do that, you're fighting a battle you were never equipped to win, because it was never your battle in the first place. Now picture the opposite end of the social ladder, because Stoicism didn't just belong to the powerless. Marcus Aurelius was the most powerful man alive, emperor of Rome, and his reign was brutal. A devastating plague swept through his empire and killed millions. War dragged on for years at the frontier. He outlived several of his own children. And at night, exhausted, in a military tent instead of a palace, he wrote in a private journal, never meant for anyone else's eyes, just reminders to himself to stay grounded, stay disciplined, stay human. That journal survived by accident. Today we know it as Meditations, one of the most read philosophy books in existence. Business leaders read it, athletes read it. Soldiers carry it into combat, and the man writing it never imagined a single other person would see those words. There's something moving in that detail. The most powerful man on earth still had to talk himself through his own pain, the exact same way an enslaved teacher did. Power didn't exempt him from suffering, it just gave him a bigger stage to suffer on. And the tool he reached for wasn't more soldiers or more wealth. It was his own mind, and his ability to choose how he responded to what happened to him. So let's make this practical, because the history is meaningful, but knowing how to use these ideas is where everything changes. The first tool is the discipline of control. Before reacting to anything, pause and ask, is this actually within my power? A canceled flight isn't within your power. How you spend the next few hours waiting for the next one absolutely is. Someone's insult isn't within your power. Whether you let those words occupy your mind for the rest of the day is entirely up to you. This single habit can quietly dissolve an enormous amount of daily stress, not because problems disappear, but because you stop wasting energy on fights you were never going to win. The second tool is something Marcus Aurelius returned to again and again, an exercise sometimes called the view from above. When a problem feels overwhelming, imagine zooming out. Picture yourself from high above, then higher above your city, your country, the entire planet floating in the vastness of space. Watching one small human wrestling with one small problem in one small moment. From that height, this morning's argument, last week's mistake, the deadline stressing you out right now, all of it shrinks into proper proportion. If that exercise helped a man carry the weight of war, plague, and grief without breaking, it can probably help you survive a difficult email. The third tool might be the most misunderstood idea in all of Stoicism, and it comes directly from Marcus Aurelius. He wrote that what stands in the way becomes the way, that the obstacle itself can become the path forward. This isn't naive positivity pretending hardship is secretly a gift. It's tougher than that. It's the decision to stop asking, why is this happening to me, and start asking, given this exact obstacle, what's the most effective thing I can do right now? Water doesn't stop when it hits a rock in a stream. It reshapes itself around the obstacle and keeps moving, often carving a more interesting path than it would have taken otherwise. This isn't just ancient theory. It has quietly shaped some of the most resilient people of the last century. James Stockdale was a Navy pilot shot down over Vietnam who spent over 7 years as a prisoner of war, enduring torture and prolonged isolation. Before his deployment, he had studied Epictetus, and he later credited that exact philosophy, the clear line between what is and isn't within our control, as the thing that kept him from breaking during those years in captivity. He couldn't control his captors. He could control his own mind. His experience later inspired what researchers now call the Stockdale paradox, holding absolute faith that you'll prevail in the end, while confronting the brutal facts of your current reality without flinching. That's not blind optimism, and it isn't despair either. It's Stoicism, distilled into a survival strategy that helped a man endure years most of us can barely imagine. It's worth clearing up a common misunderstanding here, because a lot of people hear the word stoic and picture someone cold and emotionless, gritting their teeth through life. That is not what the ancient Stoics actually taught. Marcus Aurelius grieved deeply for the children he lost. What Stoicism actually teaches is something closer to emotional intelligence, long before that phrase even existed. Notice the emotion. Understand where it's coming from. Then choose your response deliberately, instead of being dragged around by whatever feeling happens to be loudest in that moment. That's not suppression. That's mastery. There's a specific idea from Epictetus that captures this perfectly, maybe the single most useful sentence in this entire philosophy. People are disturbed not by events, but by their opinions about events. The event itself, losing a job, facing rejection, doesn't directly create your suffering. It's the story you immediately tell yourself about that event that generates the emotional impact. Two people can lose the exact same job. One spirals for months, convinced their career is finished. The other treats it as a painful but survivable setback and starts looking for the next opportunity within a week. The difference was never the job loss. It was the story each person told themselves about what it meant. This exact idea became one of the foundations of modern cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the most widely used, evidence-backed approaches in psychology today. Ancient thinkers under a painted porch in Athens were sketching out therapeutic tools that would take science over 2,000 years to formally prove. The Stoics also talked about death constantly, and not in a morbid way. They used a phrase, memento mori, remember that you will die. It sounds heavy, but flip it around, and it becomes one of the most motivating ideas a person can carry. If you truly understood, deep in your bones, that your time was limited, would you still let a stranger's opinion control your mood for the rest of the day? Would you still put off telling someone you love them? Marcus Aurelius wrote that you could leave this life at any moment, and let that shape everything you do, say, and think. Not as a threat, but as permission. Permission to stop wasting your limited time on things that don't actually matter. Picture something ordinary, sitting in traffic, running late, every red light seeming to work against you. Your jaw tightens, that hot flash of frustration creeps up your neck. In that moment you have a choice, even if it doesn't feel like one. You can let that frustration hijack you completely, or you can pause, notice the anger rising, and ask Epictetus's question. Is the traffic within my control? No. Is my reaction to it within my control? Yes. That single shift, applied consistently, day after day, is genuinely life-altering, not because the traffic disappears, but because you take back something it was quietly stealing from you. Your peace of mind. That's the real power of Stoicism, and it's why it has survived for over 2,000 years, while countless other philosophical systems faded into footnotes. It is an abstract theory reserved for scholars in ivory towers. It's a toolkit forged by a shipwrecked merchant, an enslaved teacher, and a grieving emperor, all of whom used these exact ideas to survive circumstances far harder than most of us will ever face. And the toolkit still works exactly the same way today, because human nature hasn't changed. We still confuse what we can control with what we can't. We still forget, until it's almost too late, how finite our time here actually is. So here's the real question this leaves you with. Not what the Stoics believed 2,000 years ago, but what you're going to do the next time life hands you your own shipwreck. Because it will. There will be a moment when something you cannot control falls apart right in front of you. In that moment, you'll face the same choice Zeno faced standing on the shore in Athens with nothing left. You can be destroyed by what happened to you, or you can pick up an idea and start building something new out of the wreckage. You don't control the storm. You never did, but you control the sailor. And that has always been more than enough. If this gave you something worth carrying into your day, hit like before you go. Subscribe if you want more deep dives into the ideas that have shaped humanity for thousands of years. And drop a comment telling me which part of this hit you the hardest. Because I genuinely read every single one. Philosophy Unfolded will be back soon with another story, another mind, another piece of ancient wisdom with something urgent to say to the world you're living in right now.